Hi everyone, and welcome back to A Mug's Life. If you're listening or watching this on the day that it launches, I'm wishing you a very happy Valentine's Day and also a very happy Galentine's Day. For my Valentine's Day plans, I'll be spending it watching the new Bridget Jones' Diary film with some friends. In this Tea Talks episode, Claudia and I will be talking about our New Year's intentions for 2025. We did this last year, but this year we've got a bit of a twist because we decided to spend the afternoon putting together mood boards that we could then chat through in the episode. We talk about comparison, busy minds, and finding balance in 2025. I really hope you enjoy this episode, and it's also a reminder to be kind to yourself and treat yourself with compassion as much as you do others. Welcome back to the podcast, Claudia.
Thank you, Juliet. Thank you so much for having me again. I feel very flattered.
You're welcome, because we did an episode like this last year.
Yes.
For our New Year's intentions and talking about the pressures that a new year brings and what we kind of wanted to leave behind and take forward. We thought that this year we'd do it again, but with a little bit of a twist so that it has something different to it, which was mood boards.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about how we decided to approach our mood boards today, what we've been doing for the last couple of hours?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I've stuck and cut and stuck things out from a magazine since I was at school. So I was getting my creative hat on. I was really, really enjoying this. Essentially, Juliet initially was like, right, would you like to come back to my podcast? And we're going to do a live sort of video version and we're going to do mood boards. And initially I was quite scared, like, oh God, I'm going to be on video and I don't know how to do a mood board and what are they? It was a really nice afternoon of basically cutting out different words and inspired us and made us think about what we wanted to achieve this year, what we wanted to leave behind from last year, and making a bit of a collage that came out into what looks like this. Anyone watching the video can see what the mood board looks like. But yeah, initially I felt a bit nervous going into it, but I felt like we really got into the swing of it. We had some mahogany sessions and tiny desk concerts on in the background, which was super relaxing. I've titled it My Life, big existential question there, and what I wanted from this year. But I feel like there's a lot of themes that have come up, so I'm sure we'll dive into this. But I know last year, I feel like I was in a very different headspace last year, in a different place in my life. I was living in London. I felt like my life was really, really hectic. I was feeling quite burnt out and I was trying to do 1,000,001 things and felt like I wasn't doing any of them that well. And I was looking ahead to, I think I was just about to do my Australia placement actually when we did the podcast this time last year, because I was going off in February. So I was really looking forward to that, but I was also definitely feeling like I needed something to change in my life. I needed something to shift, but I didn't know what that was. So in the end, fast forward where we got to in September, October, is I ended up moving to Bristol. So I'm now living in Bristol. So a lot of my mood board is around trying to think about last year and what I want to bring forwards and what I've learned from last year. And I think some of the key themes are thinking about balance and like a bit of calm after last year. Felt like my life was being pulled in so many different directions. It's interesting. I think there's a lot of blue and calm in here with these sort of colours. And I've got some clouds at the top, which like speak to my own name. But also thinking about slowing down and how to bring a bit more balance into my life, which I just don't think I was doing very well before. I think my whole 20s feel like they've been a lot of me running around, trying new things, throwing things on the wall and seeing what stick. And I've got to the point now where I'm like, right, I need to do a bit of a recce. I'm turning 30 next Sunday. What do I want from my life? How do I make it slow down a little bit and prioritise the things that bring me joy? That's where I've started the mood board. Do you want to talk to me a little bit, Julia, about where your head was at when we started doing these and what you wanted to think about?
I think I actually found this more difficult than last year.
Yeah.
I think maybe because you're conscious of a lot of the things that we talked about last year and not wanting to repeat ourselves. Also, there's so much that we want from our lives, I think. Everybody wants from their lives. That it can sometimes be hard to zone in. And I felt like actually last year I felt like I knew what I wanted and knew what my intentions were for 2024. I get so confused by the years.
Yeah.
But I think what's nice when we started to do these mood boards is I kind of just trusted that hopefully it would come together by what we were pulled to in the magazines.
Do you mind if I have a look at yours?
Yeah, of course.
And it was also interesting to see how Juliet and I's mood boards came out really differently, both visually and like the words that were coming out to us. A lot of the themes that are coming out from yours is strong independent woman vibes, which I think is amazing. Like you've got the word fierce here, the moment, optimism, finding calm, dare to dream, sunshine. Do you want to talk to me a little bit about why these words were important to you and what they meant about your own interests and hobbies?
Yeah, I guess, which one should I start with? I think the first thing, particularly from last year, that I felt and has come through in this when I've been reflecting on it, is I felt like last year in the same episode I said that I wanted to be more present and have some more calm. It can be quite a difficult intention to actually say I've achieved it, and perhaps I didn't because I was trying so hard to grow the podcast, still do some acting, play tennis and have some kind of social life. So this year I really want to try and be more in the moment and try not to worry about things 3 times over before getting to it. It's so much easier said than done to be actually in the moment and to think, what am I going to do today or when I wake up? Rather than thinking, I'm always thinking, what am I going to be doing in 6 months?
Yeah.
And how am I going to be different in 6 months? But I think it's really important. I was having some therapy earlier this year and she was saying to me, it sounds like you have the right tools, but you don't quite know, you can't actually bring yourself to do it.
Interesting.
Because she was asking me, she was saying, so where do you feel this tension or anxiety in your body? And how do you think you could, what's the word?
Let go?
Yeah, let go of that. And I said, I think it would help if I sort of, when I feel that rising in me, this bit of panic of, but I haven't done this and I haven't done that and I've got this Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, blah, blah, blah. I think it would be really helpful if maybe if I was at home could lie down or take a few deep breaths like we just did before this podcast.
We did some mindful breathing, guys, just before the podcast started because I think we were both feeling a bit hyped up and we were like, should we just take some deep breaths?
Yeah. It's 5 p.m. now and we've spent about 3 hours doing mood boards.
Yeah.
So we're hyped up on the sugar.
So much. I've eaten so many of those chocolate caramel buttons. I'm so sorry you didn't really get many of them.
That's okay. So and when I do those things, when I take a sip of wind, I just take 3 deep breaths. And we did that exercise in the room. Yeah. And she said, think of a happy place. And we did it for 3 minutes. And I finished and I said, I've felt so at ease. Yeah. But the thing is, I know that, but I hardly ever do that. Yeah. No, I probably do that once every 6 months.
Yeah. It's really hard to sit down and just be with yourself and to be with your own thoughts. And I constantly think I would really benefit from waking up and doing 10 minutes of meditation. Because I think, similarly, I've also had therapy in the past and currently seeing a therapist. And we talk a lot about how I overbusy myself, I think sometimes in order to avoid just like being with my own thoughts, just spending time doing nothing and having to contend with the calm that comes with not being busy, because being busy is all really fun, and I'm someone who is really driven by, like, I love dancing, I've got lots of interests and hobbies, but I think it's really important that I also spend time to not do much. And that's why some of the words I have here are lounging, and that sounds like a funny one to put in the thing, and I've got a picture of a bath, and I also have restore, and I think, and slowing down. And I spoke about this a little bit when we started chatting in the podcast, but essentially part of my move to Bristol was almost me trying to say to myself, you need to slow down a bit. Like, I don't have as many friends in Bristol because I don't know that many people there yet, and I'm still sort of finding my feet. There's lots going on in Bristol, but it's not like London where it's constantly, you're feeling a little bit in overdrive, because there's, you know, when you go into Soho and every night of the week it feels like you're at a festival. It's just so much fun, there's so much going on. It was sort of me trying to get out of that and be like, how do I just be a bit more still and find time to do the things I like to do and not feel the pressure and pull to be constantly busy and always out socialising or out of the pub. Slow down a little bit. So that's what sort of informed that move. But I really resonate with what you were saying as well about worrying about things 3 times over before they've happened. I joked about this the other day with my new boyfriend James, which I'll go into. New relationship has been a whole new change, but a really lovely thing. We were talking about how I often future-proof for things by worrying about the worst case scenario. So I'll come up with a random worry that it's not very rational, and I'll think about an event and think about what's the worst thing that could happen, and then it's almost like I'm protecting myself against the worst thing happening by preparing for it in advance. And I can't even remember what the conversation was that we had, but I was like, what if this thing happened? And he was like, meh? Like, I don't really understand. As in, he was very reassuring. And I sort of joked to him that it was like my brain is like a bit of an investigator and it's always trying to work out. We sometimes call it like ops managing in situations. If I know all the mitigating factors for something, it means that I'm prepared for, I can control life, or I can control the situation. So part of, and you've got letting go on your board, and I think I resonate with that as well, is actually part of my resolution for this year and just life is trying to not hold on to things too tightly and letting life just sort of take its course and letting things ebb and flow and not planning for everything. Sometimes life throws unexpected challenges or unexpected changes that you haven't prepared for, or things going wrong, or things positive and negative change often happens when you're not expecting it, or when you're not forcing anything. It just, something occurs and then it changes the course of your life. That's often not something you can plan for. So actually part of my thing here, I don't know if I've written it down necessarily, but it's just, well, I have something here called, it was a quote that says, when things feel out of control, you have to hold tight to the people you love and look after those people. So it's almost like life's not super in your control, and actually as long as you've got the right people around you to support you, you're going to be okay. So yeah, I'm not really sure where I was coming to with that, but interesting discussion around hyperactive brains.
I really like that, because I know you've said in the past that you're someone who tends to be really busy.
Yeah.
You pack your schedule quite
100%.
a lot.
Yeah.
And you struggle sometimes to have those lounging days. Have you found, since you thought to yourself that you'd like to do more lounging, which I love, by the way.
Yeah.
We should all be doing more lounging. I think for a long time there's been a bit of a narrative that lounging or not doing anything is counterproductive.
Yeah.
And you're not achieving your goals when you're relaxing or resting. How have you found or thought about how you can bring that into your year with what you've written actually not written?
It's a really good question, because I think I've in part started doing that and in part haven't. I wouldn't say I've failed at it because that sounds extreme, but I'm trying to have evenings where I don't have any plans. So for example, last night I was maybe seeing a friend. It was a Friday night for context. And I feel like a Friday night, sometimes when I was living in London, I was like, oh, I have to be doing something. It's a Friday. You've got Friday feels. A bit less after lockdown. I feel like Friday was a bit of a thing when you were in the office and everyone's like, Friday night. But yeah, past me would have been maybe like, oh my God, it's a Friday. I need to be busy and social and doing something. And I was like, actually, I'm just going to not really have, my friend in the end, we didn't meet up. We decided that we both just needed a chilled one. And I didn't make any plans. And in the end, I ended up watching Traitors with my flatmates. Me and my other flatmate cooked a really nice butter paneer together. And it was just a spontaneous plan. I think I considered having a bath and didn't have one in the end. I had a shower. Anyway, I don't know why I'm giving all this information. And I read my book for a bit, but it was nice to just lean into what I felt like doing that evening. And I think I got into bed after work and just lay there for a while, and I actually listened to our podcast from last year to prepare for today. So that's sort of how I try to introduce more calm now, is having evenings where I just haven't planned. And that can't include, I'm even just planning to be with my flatmates. I think it's literally just like I haven't actually organised my time at all. I think it's leaving room for spontaneity, because if you've got a free weekend, there's that really lovely thing if you wake up and you're like, oh, how can I spend my day? Whereas if you've got everything planned for the next 4 months, you get this sense, I personally get the sense of anxiety of I don't have any agency over my time. And I don't really have room for things like exercise. I love cooking, for example, and if I have a really busy week, and particularly now I'm a semi-hybrid worker, I'm not fully based in London. I'm going into London a couple of times a month. Before, everything sort of was planned out months in advance, and I would get quite stressed. I wouldn't necessarily have time just to do my own thing because everything was all booked up. Whereas now I'm just trying to bring in a little more room for sort of flex and being like, it's okay tonight if I don't have any plans, I can go for a swim, or I can go see a friend if I want to, just leaving a little bit more room for spontaneity. And I also hate letting people down. So I'm very unlikely to, if someone's made a plan with me, unless I'm really ill or something terrible's happened, I probably wouldn't cancel. And I'm very reliable, and I put myself to quite a high standard of friendship. And I think I'm a good friend to a lot of people, and it's something that I absolutely love and value. But sometimes I need to allow myself to be a bit rubbish sometimes, and almost like, oh, I haven't replied to that person's message, they're not going to hate me or unfriend me or whatever. I need to let go sometimes of putting myself on such a high standard of keeping in contact with everyone. Particularly now I'm not living in the same city as a lot of my friends. That's been a real challenge, working out almost like how to prioritise and who I'm seeing when I go into the city. It can feel quite stressful, almost like, it's not that I'm trying to prioritise friends, it's more that I want to make sure I can balance seeing friends, family. I'm now an auntie, which is really exciting, and I want to go and visit my niece. And just want to make sure that I'm keeping up those relationships, but at the same time, I don't want to burn out by constantly being on WhatsApp and not feeling like I'm enjoying Bristol. It's a balance, I would say. Life is a fine balancing act. And I know that you've got similar struggles with balancing your acting career with work.
My acting career.
Hey, I think you're doing amazingly.
Yeah, I agree. I have had similar challenges. I think I have found it easier to be like, no, I'm not going to do those things. But I think last year...
Wait, sorry, what do you mean by no, I'm not going to do
Sorry,
those
not going
things?
to have 5 nights of plans.
Oh, I see. Yes, yeah.
Because that would break me.
Yeah.
I'm very fragile. I need a lot of time indoors.
Yeah.
But then I think the flip side of that was because I really wanted to grow the podcast last year. There did come a point from June to December where I spent every day doing something for the podcast. And whilst it was so rewarding and things happened and I pitched a guest that I couldn't have dreamed that would have come on, like people on my dream guest list that I have on my notes app, with people like Judi Dench and Dawn French. Right, yeah, their names just happened to rhyme. I was like, if I said their names correctly there. That was absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
I think the more exciting the podcast got, the more time I was spending on it.
Have they agreed to come on?
No.
Oh, right. I was like, oh my gosh, I've missed this vital information.
I wish.
Yeah.
If you're listening.
Guys, get involved.
But I think that's also a lesson of you need to not be that, have that productivity all the time.
Yeah.
And so although I didn't have any plans, I actually was still filling it with a lot of work. But this year, because I've gone back to acting classes this month, as we were talking about earlier, that takes up Monday to Wednesday. And so I have a clear schedule Thursday through Sunday.
Yeah.
Obviously I add things in,
Yeah.
I'm organised to play tennis. But because it's so much that first half of the week,
Yeah.
I just couldn't cope very well, and I know what I need, and I think that's part of, actually, as I've got older, but knowing in yourself what you need and what you want.
That's really hard. Also, I'm a very indecisive person, so sometimes I'm like, I'm almost overwhelmed when I have a free evening to be like, what do I do with this time? And then I sort of waste it. I don't know, replying to WhatsApp messages, scrolling on Instagram, and I'm like, oh, where's the time gone? I think 100% as you get older, you're a little bit more mindful of. Now, I think I've got better at saying no, for example, of asserting a little bit more my boundaries and needs. So, for example, I think there's been a few occasions recently where someone suggested a plan to me and I've been like, that doesn't really work for me. But I used to bend over backwards to sort of please everyone and do everything. And then I got to the point where I was feeling a bit resentful of doing that all the time. And that was no one's fault but my own. And now I've got to a space where, particularly now I'm living in a different city, I have to be really careful about how I plan. And I do have to be a bit in advance because obviously, for example, say I'm going to London for 2 nights twice a month, I need to plan where I'm staying, and then I want to plan like, great, this means I can see a friend on that date, on this date, whatever. So it means that I can be quite careful about how I spend my time and intentional about it. It's just, I think when I was living here, I was just letting my diary get booked up without even being conscious of how I was spending my time, if that makes sense. And then I would sort of look at my calendar and be like, when am I just watching Friends or having an early night and reading my book? And also when it, like last year particularly, so I met James in April last year, but prior to that I was sort of dating like it was not a competition, but you know what I mean, going on so many dates, and I was finding it absolutely exhausting, really unfulfilling, quite anxiety inducing. And then people would always want to hear the stories about the dates, and it turned into this whole thing, and that in itself took up a lot of time as well. And I remember sometimes when I went on dates, people would just find me really unavailable because I'd be doing all these hobbies in the week and sort of prioritising my friendships. So I'd be like, I can see you in 3 Mondays at the end of July, and they sort of be like, Claudia, there's no momentum with this situation because you're so busy. And then of course when I met James and it sort of clicked, I was then like, actually, this is someone I obviously really want to make time for, and you do make that space. But my friend joked to me, she was like, how did you find the partner space in your life? Because you were really busy. And I was like, it was hard because I had to rejig almost my timetable, but obviously you naturally want to do that. But yeah, I think dating was just, it felt like a huge drain and not very enjoyable. So yeah, some time's been freed up now, but then it's been replaced in some ways as well.
It's tough, isn't it? I had a similar thing where the closest date that this guy and I could agree on for a date was in 5 weeks' time.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I think the podcast, I care so much about it, so I'm quite like, no, I can't do any times, and then that's the week that I want that episode to launch. Yeah. So that's not going to work. And then between all those things, it's...
And actually, life is about prioritising what's important to you in that moment. And I also sometimes see it almost like in eras. Maybe you're in your podcast era and that's such an exciting and amazing thing you're putting your energy into. And someone might come into your life during this time, or it might be when you're in your next era. But it's leaning into the things that are bringing you joy. And I think it's really exciting.
I think it's true. I think it's definitely something, it's hard to prioritise, because I feel like I didn't really prioritise it last year, or for most of last year. Mm-hmm. And I have to be honest and say it is something that I would want to prioritise a bit more.
Yeah.
The problem is I feel I don't know what to deprioritise. It's getting quite deep, but I don't know what to deprioritise between, because I don't want to deprioritise podcasts.
Yeah.
I don't want to deprioritise acting. And between those two things, there's just not a lot of time left.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But maybe that's just some difficult decisions that need to be made.
I really relate to what you're saying, and I've been there, and it is really, really hard. I think it's just sometimes, I mean, when James and I first started seeing each other, we weren't seeing each other necessarily all the time. It was when we both, because he also has loads of interests and also has a lot going on in his life. So at the very beginning, we weren't necessarily seeing each other once a week, and I think that was fine, because, and then you're getting to know each other quite slowly. And then eventually it will just naturally, you do find time for someone when you want to find the time, even when things are really busy. Also, someone who is an additive to your life will understand how important the podcast is to you and wouldn't want you to compromise on that for them. It would still balance itself out. You wouldn't want to sacrifice that for someone else. But also I think having hobbies and doing that, having those passions, in some ways there's an element of sacrifice. For example, in my week I've doing at the moment a flamenco class, which is so much fun, and I've just started a commercial Latin dance class as well, and it basically means every Wednesday and Thursday I'm not available to do social plans, and sometimes my flatmates will be hanging out, or there's something going on, and there's that element of FOMO, but it's also like, oh, this is a value that's important to me. And for you, assuming that, correct me if I'm wrong, but the podcast is a big part of your own values in your life, prioritising that will bring you happiness. So I think that's really important.
Absolutely, yeah. It brings me the most joy something has ever brought me in my life.
Oh, that's so amazing.
But then, and that's how, like, the back half of last year, I couldn't find a new flat, and that was really stressful. So for 4 months you have, things that don't go through and various things. So that can be stressful, because it feels like, so I had to move back home for a month, which obviously there are a lot worse things in this world. For me, it felt like all the things that I loved were on pause, which perhaps actually contributed to me getting back to London and being like, right, let's go.
Let's grab life by the horns.
And I don't regret a second of it.
Yeah.
I'm so happy.
And your flat is so lovely. Like, it's really, really lovely.
It's really lovely. And putting myself out there has seen so many rewards. This year, what I kind of wanted to reflect in the mood board is still being able to find that calmness. Yeah. And being really honest with yourself. Yeah. Are you allowing yourself to have that calmness? Or are you still thinking about other things whilst you're reading your book? Or whilst you're making dinner? I think it's so hard.
That's really tough. I think I've got a monkey mind. I remember where a therapist once said to me, I've got all these analogies from like different therapists. And you're on a train and it's moving really fast, and you need to just jump off and get off at the next station. Like, you don't need to go to the end destination. I don't want to know what the end destination is. So you just need to get off the train. And sometimes it's that, because my brain's quite prone to sort of spiralling and sticky thoughts, I call them sometimes. And to disengage from those and to be present is kind of what we've been speaking about. It's really difficult sometimes. It's like you're being dragged into a vortex and you need to get yourself back out of it. But it's like a bit of a muscle you have to learn how to use. So for example, you mentioned when you're reading, making sure you're really focused on what you're reading and catching yourself when your brain wanders off. I guess that's why people talk about how important and good mindfulness is, because you're practicing without judgment, observing what's happening in your head. And I think sometimes I'll try and do that. I'm not always good at it, but I'll be like, I noticed that my brain is anxious about this thing, or I noticed that I'm ruminating on something. Then you can make an objective view of what's happening inside your head.
What I was going to ask you, which I thought might be useful to share, is what have you found the most helpful? I think you talked about meditation.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, what do I find useful with unhooking?
What do you find useful to help you find that moment of calm?
To find calm, yeah, I'm still working on it. I think for me, it's kind of what we were speaking about earlier, giving myself time in the week to just be, and to be with myself, and to move my body as well. to actually be a bit more active, because I think particularly, I know I keep referring back to when I moved out of London, but it was quite a big deal because I'd been living there for 6 years and it took a lot of umming and ahhing and decision to move out of London. I might move back at some point, but so that was one thing. I think finding calm now for me is carving out space in the week to do exercise, not drinking as much. Not to say that I had a problem necessarily, but I think when I was particularly really high social levels, I was naturally, when you go out for dinner or you're going to the pub, there's a lot of, you're kind of going for drinks and going for work socials and all this sort of stuff. I think my lifestyle in Bristol is much more wholesome. It's a lot more like going on walks, cycling. I say I did dry January. I've kind of done damp January because I didn't drink for 10 days and was having non-alc beers and stuff. And then me and my friend went for dinner and I was like, I'll have a glass of wine. But it has made me feel a lot better because you don't get that anxiety when you wake up or feeling a bit icky and then you don't want to do productive things with your day because you're not feeling great. So I'd say actually drinking a bit less has been helpful. And have a gratitude journal, which I write in sometimes and other times I don't. But I love writing things down. I think it's a really nice way of externalizing what's going on. And actually recently I bought a 1-line-a-day diary that I wanted it to start in 2025 because it's a really nice clean 5 years and because I turn 30 next week. I've been really good. I have actually written every day so far since the 1st of January and I want to bring it everywhere with me. It's a really nice comparison point to see this time next year, where have I been? And I did it for the last 5 or 6 years because some years I would miss doing a day or whatever. Some months are really busy and some I haven't really put entries in, but it's super interesting. For me, it's about carving out time to not do stuff and to be with myself, which I'm not very good at. So it's a bit of work in progress. Oh, and baths. I've got a picture of a bath on my mood board because gotta love a long bath, find them very relaxing. What about you? What are your ways to find calm in your week or to just relax when you've got a lot of things going on?
Well, I think I need to do what I told my therapist. We talked about this breathing.
Yeah.
I think that's such a simple thing. You could do the 3 deep breaths in 40 seconds and it could really probably help to reset that when you're panicking a bit. I do find it helpful to, if I'm panicking about the week or what I have on, I'll write it in my notes app to break it down. And actually I have started a gratitude journal, trying to write 3 things each day, obviously, that I'm grateful for.
Do you do that in the mornings or the evening?
Typically in the evenings.
Yeah.
And apparently the way that you're supposed to write them is rather than saying each day I'm grateful for my health or I'm grateful for my friends, that it should be specific. So specific to the day. I do have to admit I haven't really done it in the last 4 days. But
it's really hard to keep up.
It's really hard. I have really been enjoying it. One of the things that I've really been enjoying that I think makes a big difference when you've just got a bit of a busy mind, and lots of us have busy minds and lots of stuff swirling, is going on a little walk. And I have a favourite park that I like to go to. And I hadn't been to the park for a few months, and when I got back to London and I was like, something's missing, and I stepped back into this park, that's what was missing.
Oh, that's so lovely. That's really nice.
I immediately felt calm. It's quite you can loop around the park and loop around the park, so I quite like that. It's quite pretty and you can just put your headphones in. Yeah,
I was going to say, do you listen to music or do you listen to a podcast, or how do you enjoy the park?
Tends to depend on my mood. Probably sometimes a little bit of music and then a podcast.
Yeah.
I think having something like a podcast is actually quite good. This isn't a sales thing, but I think it is quite good because if the podcast is an hour and 10 minutes, I'll be like, okay, well, I'll have to at least go on with this walk for the time of the podcast. Yeah. It's a good way to make sure that you're walking. And I know it's really boring, but getting that fresh air, it really...
No, I don't think it's boring at all. Me and my flatmate recently have started a routine of going for coffee before work, going out the house and going for a little coffee local to us. And we did it today, actually, before I was walking to Temple Meads in Bristol. We got coffee and we did halvesies on 2 pastries. It was really sweet. I turned to her and I was like, which one are you going to get? She's like, I'm not sure which one to get. And I go, shall we do halvesies? And she gave me the biggest smile. She loves, and I love trying different things. And it's a really nice routine. This wasn't before work, but getting out of the house before you start your day and doing something like getting a little coffee or going for a walk, it feels so much healthier than just going straight to your laptop. And I would really recommend it. And as our routine now, I think we do it. It depends if I'm in London that week, but every Friday or every Monday. And it's such a nice little routine, and I won't have my phone on me. It'll just be the 2 of us having a conversation. But it's really nice. I think getting outside and getting in nature is so key. and easy to forget sometimes when you're cooped up, or particularly in winter when it's really dark and it's really easy to be like, I don't want to go outside.
Yeah, and it's so obvious, isn't it? It's transformed a lot. You talking about the morning routine, and it's not like, I know that there's a book that I had about morning routines about CEOs, and they all got up at 4 a.m.
Can't do it.
Can't do that. But I decided I was getting up at one time to go to work, so say 7 a.m. to go to work, and then 8:30 when I was working from home. And this year I thought I'd like to get up at the same time every day, which I know a lot of people will do. Just getting up at 7 a.m. every day has given me so much more time.
Yeah.
And I don't want that to sound, it's so I can be productive. But I think it's about what you were saying around having some space to set you up in the way that you don't just get out of bed, get to your desk.
Yeah.
It feels good, or it's felt good for me. It sounds like it's had a good impact.
I'm not very good at it, I would say. I'm really bad at hitting snooze, and I struggle. It was quite fun. When I was younger, I very much was like the teenager who had a lion, and I'd come downstairs and my parents would be like, "Good afternoon, Claudia." I think I'm a bit more of a morning person, but I would love to wake up and get out of bed, and I'd say James is really good at it. I'm not so good. I think you do feel so much better if you put your alarm on and you're immediately out of bed. I don't really think you gain much sleep, good quality sleep, when you're sort of snoozing for 40 minutes in the morning. If you get out of bed and you start your day and you have a shower, it's that first 5 minutes that feel like really terrible. We were talking about Mel Robbins earlier. I saw an Instagram reel of hers the other day that she was like, what you need to do is you just need to count to 5 backwards when you wake up and just get out of bed. I haven't tried this yet, but I feel like I should. And I have one of those analog alarm clocks, and sometimes I'll put it on the other side of the room, so I physically have to stand up and turn it off. That still doesn't help me. I would like to follow in your footsteps and do similar, because there's also actually so much time in the mornings that you can read your book. Or for me, breakfast is one of my most favourite meals of the day. I love to wake up. If I wake up and I know that there's eggs and halloumi or something that I can have that's nice in the mornings, it brings me so much joy to have nice breakfast. And it's the flip side of that, it's the worst feeling ever if you wake up and you've got no milk, you've run out of toast, or you've got the end of a toast in the freezer, and you start the day feeling pissed off. I don't want that to happen.
What else have you got on your board that you're excited about for this year?
So I don't know if this is so much saying what I'm excited about, but just some key words. So I've got a ladder. I don't know why the ladder's there, guys, but I've got a ladder up to the word play, and then the phrase mad hats, and I've got a compass, and it's just about bringing a bit more play and joyfulness into my life. I think sometimes life can feel really serious, and I'm someone who tends to take things quite seriously, and I'd like to be a bit more playful. And I actually read this really interesting article in the Atlantic about how we need to bring more play into adult friendships in order to cement your relationships. So I'd like to be more playful. Recently, my boyfriend and his flatmate went out into the snow and bought 2 sledges and spent the weekend playing in the snow. I love that. That's just like being a kid again, and it's so much fun, and I want to bring that more into my life. I've also got a quote that says, the scariest part is just showing up. I think that sort of speaks to the last year. There's been a lot of change, and it's been scary to take that leap. I've been doing a lot of new things, going to a new dance class or trying out a new gym, and these things all sound quite small, but it's quite scary being the new person, working from a new office and not having a set team that I can get to know because I'm sort of part remote. The scariest part is showing up. Once you're there and you're doing the thing, you just got to settle into it and give it time. So I think for me, it's not so much something I'm excited for, but more wanting to manifest, I guess. What about you? Have you got anything on your mood board that makes you excited for this year?
I think actually what you were saying I really resonate with, having play and just showing up. I think play is so important. That's as much a part of my mood board as the finding calm.
Do you mind?
Yeah, and relaxing, and where I've got the weekend accompanied by a picture of a really comfortable sofa. I think it's no secret that I absolutely adore lounging. I love a TV show.
You've got a bath as well.
I've got a bath.
Excellent.
I love nothing more than doing that. And I think I'm so focused and been so exciting in the last couple of years, kind of as a result of Mel Robbins, to start living to my values. I wanted to be doing more. I started this podcast and going back to acting, which I'd not done for a couple of years, having more fun with those things. Yeah. Because sometimes those things require a lot of work, though, I've sort of lost that. I put a lot of pressure on myself, and it's so exciting, and I'm living a life aligned much more to my values, and it's incredible.
Yeah.
But equally, I want to remember to still have fun and probably like bring in that spontaneity that you've talked about with James, just like them both looking out the window, be like, it's snowing, let's
go play. Yeah.
I love that. And maybe that's the contradictory or duality in my mood board, because I feel like last year I put myself under so much pressure that I sometimes forgot. Just have fun.
Yeah.
Don't take things too seriously. And also remembering that whole, I know it's quite cheesy, but that I get to do these things, and it's a privilege to do those things rather than,
I know exactly what you mean, because it's sort of like when you're at school or when you're at university, these things are afforded to you in a slightly easier way. Having hobbies as an adult, it takes more effort. There's a financial aspect to it as well, where it can be expensive, it can be time consuming, or having to prioritise and balance lots of other things. So it actually takes a lot of self-discipline. I think what you're doing with the podcast is amazing, and with your acting, because you're having to balance that against a really busy lifestyle, and also imagine a demanding job, and having to manage all those things simultaneously. It takes a lot of self-discipline, and bringing in fun and play into your week as well. Life is just all about balance, and it can be really tricky to manage all of those things concurrently, but it's definitely doable. It's just some weeks you'll achieve it more than others, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. As we touched on earlier, being really honest, I'm so happy. I'm so much happier on a day-to-day basis. Like, I feel energized. I know that sounds, it's probably really, but I feel energized when I get up in the morning.
Yeah.
Because I feel that I'm aligned to the person I want to be. But it doesn't mean that everything in life is perfect. And we've talked about that a bit. It's so hard to have everything. There are areas, particularly for me, that I'd like to invest more in relationships and spend more time there. But
do you mean friendships or romantically?
Probably more romantically, but maybe as much as in part friendships as well. We talked about that comparison being the thief of joy, and I think I felt last year like a horse with blinkers on. I kind of try and think about that a lot, and maybe that's not good, but I think it's really good to stay focused on what you want from this season of your life and your main character arc.
Yeah, I love that. Wait, do you mean to say that that's something you wanted to have the blinkers on, or do you feel like you don't want the blinkers?
I think it's really important to be focused on your own path.
Yes, yeah.
Whatever
Sorry,
that
I understand.
looks like.
And how that links to that quote about comparison. It's a really interesting one. I think I definitely felt that there was a resistance in me, or when I made that decision to move out of London and to move into a bigger flat share. I'm now living with 3 other people. It felt like I was kind of doing the opposite of what some of my friends were doing, which was to maybe think about settling down. A lot of people around me are sort of like buying flats or moving into the next steps of their relationship, whereas I'm in my first ever relationship, moving into a different city and living with more people. It almost felt like I didn't feel like I was reverting, but it felt like a slightly different path. And I think I'm turning 30 next week, and I've mentioned this 4 times, clearly fine about it. I think that the horse with blinkers thing is interesting, because that was very much like, okay, I know what I'm doing, this is what's making me happy, and these are the things that at the moment bring me joy. And sticking to your lane, I don't know, there's definitely a phrase. I'm really bad at remembering all the phrases. Knowing that what makes you happy and what brings you joy in the direction you want your life to take doesn't necessarily mirror that of your friend or that of other people. This stage of life, there are forks in the road where your friends might take different directions and people might make different decisions, and it becomes more tricky, I think, sometimes to maintain relationships when you're all doing quite different things. And I think that's something else that I've been trying to reflect on and accept more, as the ebb and flow of life, and knowing that friends might come in and out of your lives, and you might be taking different directions at a certain point in your life, and then people might come back, and kind of accepting that. I think I resisted that a lot, particularly in the latter half of my 20s, of wanting to hold on really tight to everything. And now I'm just trying to let go a little bit more and just accept as well that everyone's got their own personal struggles and things that they're dealing with. Know that you can only control the way that you manage your time and your own, and live by your own values. Learn to let go a little bit more and actually not hold on to things too tightly. And that's been something that, again, moving into Bristol has been part of that learning of, it's okay if I don't see a friend for a few months. It doesn't mean that we're not as close. It just means that life was busy and now I'm living in a different city, and then we'll reconnect and have a really lovely time. And there might be a time where we're living in the same city again. I've got a couple of friends who are living in Bristol that I wasn't seeing as regularly, and now we see each other 4 times a week, and it's so nice, and it's like having a renaissance.
I love that
I will
word.
coin that term. I'm sure it's come up somewhere. How do you feel about the idea of this age, people making different decisions and managing that? It can be quite, I personally found it quite difficult.
Yeah, I have found it difficult. I think because often you can feel that you lack what others have.
Yeah.
And I think that's that shift in perspective that I've tried to have of, but actually you have all of this.
Yeah.
And isn't that amazing?
Yeah. And I'm sure some people look to you and they're like, oh my God, Juliet's smashing it with the podcast and pursuing all your hobbies. And a lot of people would like to be more like that, but maybe a bit scared of starting something new or to dedicating their time in that way. There's always a flip side. You might not realise that other people are looking to you to be like, I wish I could be more Juliet. Do you see what I mean?
Totally. I think the outside view is always different than the inside view. So somebody could be in the happiest relationship and be just so in love.
Yeah.
But they could be having other difficulties.
Yeah.
Hopefully not, obviously.
Yeah.
But generally, that is the reality. That's why I started to think, am I happy in the day? And trying to carve out that happiness, which actually that gratitude journal is quite helpful for, or I guess meditating is helpful for, or taking a few deep breaths. I think social media is always on. And obviously everyone always says how Instagram is a highlights reel, etc, etc. But that's what we're all seeing. And so although I say comparison and seek joy, again, it's easier said than done, because everything that we're consuming is a reminder.
And also I think me and my flatmate had a really interesting chat about this the other day, actually. It's the abundance of choice. So to your point about the always on thing, it's also, you know how much choice there is out there now, and even where am I going out for dinner, or what Netflix show do I want to watch this evening? And I think we actually talked a bit about this last year, but there's almost too many options, and there's that old saying where if you're given too many options, you end up not making any decision. And I think sometimes for me that can feel quite overwhelming. I go through phases of deleting my personal Instagram app because I'm finding myself overloaded with images. It's almost like sensory overload and too much information, where that person's been on holiday that you went to uni with 7 years ago, and that person's broken up with their boyfriend, and this person is out for a meal in that Italian restaurant, and it's so much information to be processing the first point in the day when your brain's not even awake yet. So I find the For You feed can get into really toxic spaces sometimes. Sometimes I've clicked on a video and it then encourages me to click on more videos about weight loss programs or exercise routines and stuff like that, and it can get into really toxic video chains. I try to have a healthy attitude towards engaging with social content and knowing that, as you say, it is a highlights reel. People on the surface might look like they're doing okay and posting stories about whatever, but actually underneath that you might know in yourself or in someone else that there's other stuff going on that's not making the Instagram stories. So I think it's easier for us, maybe our generation, to have that awareness, but I worry a bit for younger generations who don't know anything else. They've sort of grown up and they've been exposed to that from such a young age, whereas I think when we grew up we had Facebook, but I would bring my digital camera on a bus trip to a school away day and you would take selfies and stuff. But it was all very unself-conscious. It was just a different way of engaging with social media. I think now it's a lot more, you put the best version of yourself out there, the image that makes you look the skinniest, or the photo that makes your skin look the best, and it's not really about the moment anymore. It's about the moment and how it appears on the outside, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'm really conscious of that whenever I'm engaging with Instagram or other social mediums.
Yeah, so true. Shall we move on to the things that we're looking forward to this year?
Yeah.
In particular?
Yeah.
And if there's anything else you want to say from your mood board as well?
Do you want to start, Juliet? What are you most looking forward to this year?
Sorry,
I've flipped it back to you.
I've actually talked about the podcast quite a lot in this episode. I'm always excited for that. I cannot, these things and creating something that it's just fun. It's a fun creative outlet is really rewarding.
Yeah.
And so I'm really looking forward to growing that. And we've upgraded the equipment. This is the first time recording with our new
this equipment set is amazing. It's so cool. It feels very premium. I feel honoured.
That's my new description for the podcast. So that really excites me. And also I think you don't know where it's going to go, because it's so... I don't know where it's going to go. What else am I excited for? And I'm excited for, which will link into that word of the year. I think I've put on having on letting go. I just want to allow things to happen and not try and control. I feel like sometimes I'm wrangling all the things because I'm trying to guide it and be like, well, if that goes there, then all of that will happen. And one of the things that I've recently been saying to myself, which I said to you before the recording, is I no longer think, oh yes, being a podcast will lead to a big podcast, or going to acting classes will lead to being an actor necessarily. But I do believe that the work will lead to something good. And the work is never ever wasted. And that, I'm really excited about that because it makes it every day easier to keep doing those things. So for me, it's actually not a lot of new things this year. It's more the mindset. I would like to have
I love that.
A more freeing mindset, almost on myself. I feel like I have a stranglehold on myself sometimes, and I'm my worst enemy. And I would like to just release that a little bit and continue on the path that I've set up, but also not be so, well,
hard
this
on
has
yourself.
to lead to that, and more, this will lead to something amazing if I keep going. Who knows what?
But also, I think building on that, thinking about your podcast and how far you've come from the idea through to where you are now and the amazing guests you've had on here, I think it's about recognising how far you've come and the progress, because it's really easy to think, oh, but I'm not at this amount of listens, or I haven't got this guest on, or whatever. Don't want to put words in your mouth. If you look back and see how much you've achieved and how far you've come, that in itself is so exciting, and you should be so proud of that. And taking a recce, I guess we're talking about gratitude, and I really like that this year you're thinking about almost cementing the things you set out to achieve last year. This year is almost about sinking into them a bit, being like, okay, how do I relax into this position? Almost really exciting way to approach this year, and it feels quite compassionate as well, which I think is really nice.
I think you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what I'd love to do. What about you?
What do I want? I think we spoke about this a bit earlier, because I was nearly going to put 2025 on my board. And then I know we spoke about this of maybe it's not about new year, new me resolutions. It's more about intentions of how I want to go into a new decade. Age is just a number, but I like the idea of metaphorically, I'm turning 30. What's the energy I want to bring in? So I think we'll go into sort of words of the year, so I don't want to, no spoilers here, but I think what I'm looking forward to this year is settling. So settling into Bristol, really enjoying my new relationship, making new friendships in Bristol, being okay with if I don't make loads of new friends, because actually I've got already such a lovely support network around me. And I had a chat with my mum actually recently. She was like, Claudia, you've already got quite a lot of friends. Don't put loads of pressure on yourself to go and expand your network in Bristol. Maybe just enjoy. I've got my boyfriend, his flatmates, and my new house, and some friends I've made from dance, and some school friends. That's already quite a lot of people that I really love and care for, and I don't need to run around putting pressure on myself to make loads of new friendships. So I think this year I'm looking forward to settling into things and just feeling more comfortable in myself and my own identity. I've also put a little rainbow on this mood board because I'm bisexual, and I was dating quite a lot of women. I say quite a lot, that sounds like I was dating all over the place. Before I met James, I was dating both men and women, and that had been quite a new thing for me. And the reason I put a rainbow here was to honour my bisexual identity. And even though I'm in a relationship with a man, that doesn't negate the fact that I'm bisexual. That's something that feels for me quite big to say on the podcast, and something I maybe have been, I don't want to say ashamed of, because I'm really proud of my identity, but it's something that I maybe felt like with trepidation to sort of bring up into a space. But I actually think it's a really important thing for me to talk about, because my identity is a big part of who I am, and for me it's more about the person than the gender. So this year it's also about settling into myself, I would say, and being comfortable in my own skin and accepting who I am. Whereas I think last year was maybe the goals were more about doing things, and I did have learning to drive in my head to talk about this year, which embarrassingly I still don't know how to drive, but it's more about settling into Bristol, settling into a new way of working, settling into myself a bit, and just being, and I sometimes berate myself, oh, I'm such an overthinker and my brain's such a monkey brain, and I don't know, I sort of get into this rut being like, oh, I wish I was different, or I was someone else. Maybe this year is more about celebrating the things that I find frustrated in myself. James said something nice the other day about what the good comes from being an overthinker and a problem solver. There's a lot of positive that comes from that, more in fact than perhaps it being a negative. Being a good friend and being someone who's careful and conscientious, and those qualities make me good at work as well, actually. If I was someone who didn't really care about anything, that would in itself not necessarily be a positive thing. So it's celebrating the things that you find to be a negative quality in yourself. I'm realising how much good there is in those qualities. That's a roundabout way of talking about this year. So in sum, should we talk about, Juliet and I had a word of the year last year.
Yes.
And we've done the same this year.
Should we say what our word of the year last year was?
Spoilers, listen to last year to know what the word was. We will reveal.
Oh.
What was your word?
I think my word was stability.
Yes, I remember.
That kind of obviously got thrown out the window when I had to move flats, and then I couldn't find a flat and everything was on pause. So I felt like the year ended up being less stable and more, right, we must grow, we must get better, we must get stronger, everything must be bigger. So perhaps I think that's slightly apt in what's coming into this year. I've actually live switched my word from what it was.
Oh, you've live switched it. Ooh, live reaction from me
but
on your way.
I think my word is going to be patience.
Oh, I love that.
It's going to be patience because it's patience with myself and it's patience in all of the pursuits.
Yeah.
And I also, which is maybe a little bit of a stretch, I want patience to link with that feeling of being able to sit and switch off or change the channel or be able to just sit and breathe and enjoy in that moment. Also, having that patience will allow me to have more fun and to open myself up to new opportunities in a way, because sometimes that could wait till tomorrow, or maybe sometimes I do this already, but I'll set a half an hour timer to work on whatever I need to work on. Maybe then I could go out for the rest of the evening.
But also patience is something that it goes back to what you were saying with the podcast. It started off as a name and an idea. You probably had to be quite patient with the journey of the podcast because you weren't immediately going to have loads of content to publish, or you had to start from zero. You didn't have an Instagram following before. You had to go start from its infancy because you are the creator. Patience, I think, is a really good... I think that's a really good choice because it reflects both your projects that you're working on, but also your state of mind that you want to achieve as well. So I think that's a really good one. I wouldn't have thought of that, actually.
I also was just thinking when you were saying about your identity and that settling, I know that's not your word of the year, but I really like that because something that we've covered a fair amount in the podcast overall, 3 different guests, but the multiplicity of who we are. And I think sometimes you feel that you have to not hide parts of yourself, but maybe if you're not fully in living that particular identity at that point, that you feel a bit, I'm not a part of that.
Yeah. I think what did you say, the multiplicity
of something,
the multidisciplinary. I really liked your phrasing, and that's something I spoke a little bit to last year, of the duality of life can be hard to accept sometimes. You can feel angry about something whilst also feeling joy for something else. Maybe that ties a little bit into what it means to be bisexual and have 2 different identities in some ways. There's something really interesting in like 2 truths can coexist concurrently. People don't like duality. Like I think humans want like certainty and consistency and things to have a clear-cut answer, for things to be black and white. But a lot of life is living in the grey. Being patient, to your point, is really a very, I think, way to slide into the 30s. It's like patience and calm.
What about your word of the year?
Oh yes, of course. So forgot about that. So last year my word was courage, and I was trying to remember, why did I say courage? If I think about the decisions I made last year, it took courage to move out of my flat. It took courage to really own that decision and to sort of settle into a lot of change. I feel that word was very appropriate. It took courage to move to Australia for a short stint and to go and work for a company where I didn't know anyone, to live by myself in Sydney, a city I didn't know. I had one really close friend who lives there, but it was, again, that took courage. And I did a solo trip to Colombia the previous year. So courage was a huge part of that. My word for this year is balance. And funny enough, someone in one of the magazines I've cut out a phrase from has said that their word for 2025 is balance. We've spoken about this a lot over the last hour or so. Well done if you've stuck to this point, everyone. I will be quizzing you on my word for 2025 to check that you've listened to the whole podcast. And patience. I've struggled to balance friendships in Bristol, London. Obviously, I'm very close to my family, keeping up with those relationships, and also my currently romantic relationship, which before I didn't really make time for. Not my current relationship, but I've struggled to make time for like dating and my romantic life. So this year is about how do I try and achieve balance, but also be compassionate with myself if some weeks things have to give. So there might be some weeks where I'm really good at prioritising my relationship, but I'm not so good at calling up my friend and checking in. But there might be other weeks where I'm a bit more, don't see James as much, but I've really excelled at work and I've caught up with my family and I've called my auntie or whatever. It's about balance, but it's also about being compassionate where I might slip up and not be balanced that week, or I might fail in one area. And that's okay. I'm a human being and I make mistakes and I'm not perfect. And that makes us who we are.
Yeah, that's really a nice intention. Allowing not the imperfections, but that's life. Life is, it's not predictable, it's not certain, and we're very, very harsh on ourselves as a collective, I think.
Yeah.
I really, really like that. Shall we go on to, I think we're going to do one recommendation each.
Yes.
Of either a book, TV show, film.
Yeah. Do you want to start?
You can start.
I can start? Okay. I'm sneaking over here with my eyes because I've put the book over there so I can remember everything. I'm reading a book called Absolutely and Forever at the moment by Rose Tremaine, and I've been binging it on the train on the way here. And it's about a teenage sort of love story and how that evolves and the ups and downs that come in and amongst that. But it's much more than that. I think the way that the main character is writing in the narrative, there's just a lot of relatability and humour and a really interesting observation of family dynamics. So I'm really enjoying that at the moment. And then also have been absolutely binging The Traitors and have become a quasi-investigator. Watching that show with my flatmates, I've become quite obsessed. So really enjoying The Traitors, but not particularly original recommendation, but quite interesting sociological observation of human beings. Throw to you, Juliet. What are
Who's
you
your pick?
enjoying?
Who would you like to win?
Who would I like to win?
Traitors.
Ooh, I think I would like Mina to win.
This will go out after the finale, so.
Ooh, interesting. I think she's worked so hard from the very beginning and she's doing really brilliantly. And I think she really deserves it based on that. And it's interesting because I thought I would be Team Faithful, but actually I think Mina's smashing it. So I'm Team Mina. What about you?
Faithfuls are just, there's a lot of different opinions. And I know that would be me because I think it's so hard when you're watching it and you know who is the traitors. But obviously they don't know who the traitors is. For my recommendation, it's something that I've already talked about, but I believe so passionately about it, I'm talking about it again, which is a TV show called Blue Lights, which is a police crime procedural set in Belfast in Ireland about a few rookie police officers who were varying ages, and it's really good. The writing is sensational, the acting is so believable, and it really endears you. I'm not ashamed to say I have already cried, and I really don't cry at TV shows normally, so yeah, it's brilliant, and it's on BBC iPlayer.
Oh, awesome.
So
that sounds
hopefully
really good.
Quite easy for people to watch.
I need to start a new series once The Traitors is over, so that will definitely be on my list.
It's really, really good. And it's already been greenlit for series 3 and 4. And
Oh,
it's
wow.
only had 2 series.
It's clearly doing really well if it's already been commissioned for 2 more series.
Thank you so much for coming on. I think it was so fun.
It's been really fun.
A whole afternoon doing our mood boards.
I think we've integrated play into today, personally.
We have.
Yeah, should we hold these up concurrently?
Yeah.
I might put this on my wall, just to remind myself every day to be like, these are what are the things I'd like to work towards.
Yeah, I feel like I'd highly recommend doing mood boards. I think even if you collect a few magazines or ask some of your friends for their old magazines, so much fun, and it's really a creative outlet.
100%. Your inner child comes out, I think. You're like, oh, look at this cloud, look at this word, and everything's a bit mad. Why do I have a staircase and a bath on this? And why do I have a figurine of a woman with an ocean inside her? Who knows? It's fine.
It's a really nice reminder, and then we can put it up and look at it. And we talked about this, but I don't really necessarily we don't think New Year's goals. We think it's a good opportunity for a fresh start.
And a bit of a reset.
But thinking about the intentions and the energy that you want to have moving forwards, I think is healthier than necessarily being like, I need to achieve all of this. So it's been so much fun.
Yes.
Hope you all enjoyed it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.